If you want to upset someone, tell them that people with guide dogs aren't blind. Generally, the reaction will be either to say you must be joking, or they will grow increasingly hostile at your explanation, link below, before referring to some friend of theirs who is most definitely blind and accusing you of somehow insulting this friend. What they will not do is use logic like, how does the dog know where it is going? Not all animals have the intelligence of Skippy or Flipper or Lassie, so telling a dog you want to go to Tesco's is likely to lead to a wagging tail and not the deli counter for £1/2 of luncheon meat. And here is a useful and informative YouTube video on the subject, link below. Moving on. For those unaware of the South Sea Bubble, this LibriVox recording of the book by Charles Mackay, link below, is a useful place to start. The book doesn't cover in detail perhaps the most interesting aspect of the affair, that of Robert Knight's adventures in Europe and the role played by Prime Minister Walpole in keeping out of reach of the baying mob and thus revealing the money Walpole had made from the collapsed company. See Holcombe Hall, link below. But it is well worth a listen, if only for the language. My reason for mentioning the South Sea Bubble is the number of interesting joint stock companies, called bubbles, that sprang up around the same time. For instance, the company with a plan to build a cannon to fire square cannonballs, though my particular favourite is the company for carrying on an undertaking of great advantage, but no one is to know what it is. Which brings me to the Labour Party, as they are in a position of making great promises without anyone knowing what they are. Currently, there are two impending by-elections, one in Copeland, Cumbria, and the other in Stoke-on-Trent in the Midlands. There are a number of connections between these constituencies. Both voted strongly for Brexit, both MPs are on the Blairite wing of the Labour Party, and both constituencies are due to disappear due to boundary changes. And there are a number of ways of looking at this. For one, in the current climate, with the whiff of general election rumours swirling, Tristram Hunt and Jamie Reid are doing the sensible thing by looking out for their own self-interest. The Corbynites hate the centre-right of their party probably more than they hate everyone else, so there is little hope of either MP being selected to fight another seat. Or you could see it as Tony Blair using his influence to get them to stand down in order to have mini reruns of the Brexit campaign, in the hope that extrapolations can be drawn from the results to show that the Brexit resolve is weakened as part of his ongoing schemes to undermine Brexit/Lexit. Or you could see it as further evidence of a plot to shaft Jeremy Corbyn. The last point is not difficult to argue. It is no secret that the Labour Party is split, most clearly seen after the Brexit referendum, when there was a vote of no confidence in Corbyn, a leadership election, people doubling up on shadow cabinet jobs because so many refused to serve under him. This in turn has manifested itself in the wider party, not helped by the activities of Momentum, which is itself undergoing much of the same turmoil, with allegations of Trotskyists infiltrating the movement, itself accused of being a Trotskyist movement within the Labour Party, and as if this were not bad enough, Momentum is not affiliated with the Labour Party, something they are now seeking to rectify, link below, in a move interpreted as to allow them to kick the Trots out of their movement. In case you are confused, you have an unaffiliated movement of picking the leader of a political party who is now affiliating with that political party to protect the leader of the movement. Add to this a number of Tories who specifically joined the Labour Party, specifically to vote for Corbyn as leader, specifically in order to destroy the Labour Party. Link below. Labour claims to have weeded these people out, but without sodium pentothal and thumbscrews, I doubt they've caught them all. So, when Labour Party members point to their increasing membership as a sign of strength, you would be more than justified in having a giggle, as was shown in the Richmond by-election, where the Richmond Labour Party has 1,600 members, but garnered only 1,515 votes. Link below. The standard answer given by Labour activists and MP is the standard, "we must all pull together." What they don't explain is what we are expected to rally around. And in fairness, Jeremy Corbyn is part of the problem, because he lacks the ability, essential in politicians, to speak at great length without saying anything. Instead, and this is an admirable quality in children but not in leaders, he tries to tell the truth. The example that springs to mind is that he was asked about housing. He said his policy was to provide everyone in Britain with a decent home, and then immediately goes on to answer a question about immigration by saying that he is not in favour of immigration controls. Now, on immigration, it should be pointed out that there is a case to be made for why the Blair government did what it did, namely that there was a large stock of social housing that was unused or in a poor state of repair and affecting the public purse due to arcane accounting rules relating to how the housing stock was initially paid for and the ongoing arrangements for repayment of the debt that affected the balance sheet of local authorities. Not that it was a particular strain on the public purse, as the debts of the older housing stock were by the year 2000 largely paid off. However, the repair bills were high, which partly explains why millions of pounds of public assets were sold off, often for as little as £1, to housing associations in order that they would undertake the repairs and supposedly build more houses. Not that the Labour Party ever made that case, because to make it would have been an admission of the immigration policy, and that would undermine the later claim that the Blair government did not encourage immigration and it was all a total shock. And before returning to Corbyn's pledge, a quick note. In 2015 there were 64,000 homeless families in the UK, including 93,000 children. Link below. Your average Labour supporter will no doubt make the claim that this homelessness is all the fault of the evil Tories. Their problem is that shortly before they left office, the Gordon Brown government implemented the bedroom tax and the changes to social housing that allowed housing associations to charge market rates for rents. Whilst it is true that the Tories, to their shame, carried on this policy, the fact remains it was dreamed up by Caroline Flint, and in the case of the bedroom tax was specifically designed to get particularly older people out of houses in order that they could be given to immigrants. Thus, having dreamed up the plan by which social housing went from having surplus to a shortfall, and creating the situation in which housing costs have risen to the extent that the government is forced to supplement the wages of those in work, a position worsened by Labour propping up the banks, Labour now spends its time pretending that it has nothing to do with them. So, to return to Corbyn's claim that he is not in favour of controlled immigration and that he plans to build houses for everyone, blithely ignoring that the past 15 years have proven this policy will not work, he still thinks it a vote winner, despite everyone knowing that there is not enough money to build the houses required, and unless you control immigration, then you will just drive up homelessness. And more laughably, during the election campaign, Corbyn and his contender Owen Smith had a bidding war as to how much each could spend. While it is true this was largely a phony war, since it was obvious Corbyn would win because of the momentum and undercover Tory vote, it still didn't stop them dazzling the gullible with their vision of prizes for all. At one point the figure 500 billion was waved about. What neither of them mentioned is that the problem with public spending is that it rarely achieves the intended effect. Dating back to Michael Heseltine, successive governments have engaged in urban redevelopment schemes. Vast sums of money have been poured into areas of deprivation, and all that has really been achieved is a bit of some slum clearance, the odd playground here and there, and all the money funnelled out of the deprived communities and into the wealthy areas in which the contractors live. Back in the early 2000s, there was a research paper by a professor from, I think it was the University of Newcastle, who showed just this. Unfortunately, I can't provide a link, so you'll either have to take my word or find it yourself. His findings were along the lines that for every £10 spent on redevelopment, less than £1 stayed within that community, and he suggested that it would be better to give each person living there half of the intended money, let them do what they want with it, and for the government to save for itself the rest. The thinking behind this is not as crazy as it sounds, because the problem with deprived communities is that they lack access to capital, and no doubt there would be some that would piss it up the wall or move away or whatever, but equally there would be others who would use the windfall to start businesses. And the Macaubers amongst you will argue, don't these people have access to banks, and doesn't the government have schemes to promote business? To which the answer is yes, but a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Of course, this advice was not followed. Instead, the Blair government went into the redevelopment business in a big way. There is barely a northern town or city that doesn't have a new shopping centre or urban park, fountains and statues, and the whole paraphernalia that goes with the outward appearance of regeneration. Wild claims were made about all this at the time, with Barnsley supposedly becoming akin to the south of France, replete with architects' drawings of cafe culture and laser light shows. And here's an odd thing. Go and look at a Brexit map. Here's one, link below. Look at England and imagine that map is labelled areas where regeneration money ends up. Would it really be so surprising to see lawyers dealing with government contracts in London, or architects bidding for contracts across northern England being based in Manchester or Harrogate? Or that they live in Oxfordshire, on the Wirral or up the Dales? Sooner or later, the Labour Party is going to have to wake up to these facts, because it is perfectly obvious the voters in northern England can see them.